Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming to the program author Jill Todd, and she is the author of Avalon Sky. Before I bring in today's guest, a quick reminder, the selected interviews are available at our website, as well as on major platforms like Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and many more. Jill, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Good. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I'm fairly recently retired. I retired about 2 years ago, which has given me more time to write. And so I recently brought out this new book, Avalon Sky, which I'm hoping is going to be the start of a series.
So tell us about your book.
Well, it's a thriller, so there are plenty of twists and turns and suspense and a murder or two, and it keeps the reader guessing. But it's also about the relationship between the two main characters who have a slightly unusual marriage in the sense that they're cousins, which has caused some controversy and online abuse and so on among friends as well as people they don't know. That's kind of where the book starts, that they're in a bit of a quandary because they've lost a baby, and not for any particular reason, but the husband, Kit, who's telling the story, he's very concerned about trying again because he's worried about the fact that they've got this blood relationship. So that's where it starts. And he's actually a TV presenter and his wife's a researcher. And so they've got 2 months free before they have to start a new contract. And at this time, a friend persuades them to help research the history of his little village in Somerset, which is in the southwest of England. And he offers them free use of holiday cottage if they'll help him, which really appeals to them. They think, well, perhaps what they need is a break to clear their heads and so on. And they think, well, it's easy. It's just interviewing elderly villagers and so on. But before they even get there, their friends disappeared in a way that implied he hadn't gone of his own accord. And suddenly this restful break that they're hoping for is going to pot. They decided to carry on with the research, but I don't really want to say any more than that because I'll be giving away spoilers to what happens next.
Now, who did you write your book for specifically? Who's your target audience here?
It'll appeal to readers who like thrillers with an emotional backstory and perhaps a few more layers. I mean, there's mystery and action, obviously, but it is a love story too. Even though Kit and Lissa are already married, I think it's really for people probably 25 plus because it's about a marriage as well as being a thriller. And probably, I thought originally for female readers, but I've had some positive feedback as well from men. So I'm thinking maybe I should revise that and say, well, maybe men seem to like it as well. But perhaps that's because it's written from a man's viewpoint. I'm not sure.
Now, could you say there's any type of central message or perhaps underlying theme that you would say runs throughout your book?
I'm not trying to sway anyone or persuade anyone of anything. I really just want a reader to enjoy the ride and enjoy trying to guess what will happen next. But also, I'm hoping that they'll engage with my main characters to the point of wanting to meet them again. That is quite important because I want to write other books about them as well.
So if you had to choose, what would you say is the single most important idea you're sharing in your book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
I'm guessing that a reader might read thrillers for the same reason that I do, which is to escape and to experience from kind of the safety of my own armchair or their own armchair, the sort of intrigue and danger that would be extremely uncomfortable and frightening in real life. So if a reader feels that Avalon Sky has given them that kind of escape, I'll be fine with that. I'll feel that I've done my job, but also to have problems that in a way might resonate with a reader because although he's brave physically, he does struggle to open up emotionally, even to his wife about his deepest fears. And he wants always to give the impression that he can cope, that he's on top of things. And so he sets himself a very high bar, which of course he can't always live up to. And I think that's something that a lot of people might relate to, well, including me actually. But what a reader takes from that, if anything, is up to them. They might just want to read it as a thriller.
Now, if you were asked to compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
That's quite tricky because I wanted my story to include a few unusual elements so that the reader wouldn't feel that they'd picked up a rehash of standard thriller tropes. But having said that, I'm a huge fan of Tim Weaver's novels in particular. I think they were what inspired me to try to write the kind of thriller that pulls several different strands of a mystery together, as well as having a lot of twists. And I hope reaching a satisfying conclusion, but one that will also encourage a reader to buy the next book.
So can you tell us briefly about some of the characters in the book?
Okay, they're quite a diverse set of people. I already knew Kit and Lissa from my previous novel, but they still say and do things that surprise me. I've said quite a lot about Kit already. I was keen to tell his story because he's complicated and has some hang-ups, despite being more outwardly confident and self-assured than Lissa. Lissa struggles with self-confidence, and she's cautious and not physically very adventurous. But underneath, she's stronger and more resilient than Kit, as he'd be the first to admit. But in spite of their problems, they're very close and really in love with each other. So I'm hoping a reader will root for them to sort out their issues and stay together. I think Ben, who's the younger brother of the guy who disappears, he's my favourite secondary character, partly because of his habit of blurting out unfortunate remarks without thinking, which seems quite endearing, although probably it's less so if it was a real person. And I always enjoy writing villains, but I'm not going to say anything about him or her or them for fear of someone guessing who they are.
But was there anything from your own life you put into these characters?
I probably use little aspects of all the people I've ever met, whether consciously or unconsciously. I suppose I mix them up to create characters, as well as throwing in a few of my own traits here and there, I expect. I don't tend to do that consciously, but I can certainly identify with some of their hang-ups and faults. But sometimes people who actually know me will point out something from my books that I hadn't even realized came from real life. And the most striking example of that was when my previous book came out. One of my cousins said it reminded her of our own shared childhood, because as cousins, there was a lot of us used to play together. And I was quite shocked because some of my fictional characters were quite vicious and or no resemblance to my relatives. But I could see that growing up with a group of cousins had given me the idea.
Now, was there a character or scene, perhaps, that you could say is your favorite?
Okay, without giving any spoilers, I really enjoyed using Lundy Island for the ending. I'd probably got more satisfaction from completing some of the scenes between Kit and Lissa. 2 or 3 of those in particular were very emotional and just very hard to get right. And at one point I had to walk away from the computer because I was basically in bits. I got a bit too involved, but it was a huge relief to finish those scenes. But I don't know if favourite is quite the right word, but it was a relief.
But why did you write this book?
I got the idea from my previous book, Echo of Bells, which I'd written as a standalone thriller, but Kit and Lissa stayed alive in my head afterwards. I wanted to know what would happen to them next and what they would do with their lives, really. So when I retired and had more time, I started thinking about writing a series that would answer those questions, and Avalon Sky is the result, or the first result, possibly.
Why did you choose to write from a male perspective?
Because Echo of Bells was Lissa's story. So for Avalon Sky, I wanted to swap and show Kit's viewpoint. And once I decided that, I realized it would work best that way. Well, partly because his career as a TV presenter made it feasible to have him headhunted to front a show about cold cases, which I thought that would be useful because it meant I could go on to write a series using that premise. I tried writing Avalon Sky in the third person, but that didn't work because I found that I needed to see through Kit's eyes to find his voice.
But what made you choose the locations you're using in this story?
I like to pick a location that's atmospheric and inspires plot ideas, really, and it has to be a place that I know or can get to know relatively easily. I set Avalon Sky mainly on the Somerset Levels, which is a real area in southwest England. And most of the towns and villages that I've mentioned are real, but I did create one fictional village called Netherzoy, plus a few remote houses and 2 airfields. The only reason was that I didn't want anyone thinking I was slandering the residents of a real place. And I chose that part of Somerset for its association with the legends of King Arthur. That whole area is often identified as the Isle of Avalon or the Vale of Avalon in some sources. And the legends describe that as a place of healing and magic. So it seemed appropriate to the story because Kit and Lissa are grieving the loss of their baby and confused about where to go next and what to do. And I wanted the landscape and its history and perhaps its railroad ghosts to play a subtle role in that journey. As for Lundy Island, I was very, very keen to end the story on the island because I love it myself. I've been there lots of times. It's just an ideal place for the climax to a thriller. It's only 10 miles off the coast, but it feels genuinely remote. And the mobile signal is just terrible. It's just in little spots here and there and in the pub where you're not allowed to use your phone. There's no television at all in the holiday lets, and the ferry is only a passenger ferry. You can't take cars on the ferry, and obviously not on the helicopter and bad weather either. And so the only vehicles on the island are a couple of Land Rovers and quad bikes, which belong to rangers, plus the occasional tractor. And everything is old-fashioned. It really is like stepping straight back into the 1950s. It's like being beamed in and kind of a time machine. So, yeah, it was very suitable.
So are any aspects of this story based on your personal experience?
Well, the locations, of course, but apart from that, the flying aspect is somewhat based in reality. There are 2 fictional airfields in the story, so they're an amalgamation of various small airfields that I've flown into as a passenger over the years. There's also a tiny aeroplane, which is definitely based on a real one, because about 25 years ago, my husband and 4 of his friends won a microlight aircraft called a Jabiru in kit form in a magazine competition. And it took them 3 years to build it. I've been up in it many times since then, but I'm quite nervous. So my husband still flies it. Although the other syndicate members have changed over the years. So in Avalon Sky, I had a family, Ben's family. They bought a Jabiru in kit form when he was very small. The family built it themselves. And in the story, he now maintains and flies it, which does have a bearing on the plot. Our own Jabiru is based at a small airfield close to where we live, but I'm afraid ours has never been involved in solving a crime, or possibly I'm glad it hasn't.
Well, what are you planning on writing next?
At the start of Avalon Sky, Kit's just been headhunted to front a TV series on unsolved murders and disappearances. So I'm planning to use that framework, as I said, for the plots of future books. I've written about 2/3 of the next one, only as a first draft though, but I'm hoping to finish it by next summer, so it should be out towards the end of next year. That book will feature Somerset again, but also some new locations, including the Isles of Scilly, which is a group of islands nearly 30 miles off the western tip of Cornwall, which is, if anyone doesn't know, it's right at the southwestern tip of Britain. And those islands have a rich history of their own, so I'm weaving that into the story.
So in your opinion, who should buy your book?
I think it'll appeal mainly to readers aged 25 plus, possibly a little bit older, possibly 30 plus, because of the focus on the central character's marriage. So that's more likely to have some relevance to people who aren't terribly young. As I said, I would have expected my readers to be mainly female, but I'm no longer sure about that. I think it seems to me that some men who've read it are very positive about it as well. So perhaps I should take notice of that and say that any gender would enjoy it, as long as they're not teenagers, or under 25s.
Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. My website is quite basic because it's still a work in progress, but it does contain some information and pics that a reader might like, such as pics of the locations from the book. If anyone would like to check it out, the address is jilltoddnovelist.wixsite.com/books. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Jill Todd Author as well.
Well, this has been just great. Our guest today has been Jill Todd, and she's the author of Avalon Sky. Jill, thanks very much for being with us today.
You're welcome. It's nice talking to you.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of the Author Show. Go out there, buy the book today, and please share this interview with your friends so they too have the opportunity to discover our guests and their work. The Author Show can be accessed at any time at theauthorshow.com. And whether you're an author who would like to be featured or a reader in search of new books to read, The Author Show is a great place to start. Check us daily as we continue to introduce wonderful authors of very interesting books on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. theauthorshow.com, Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.